Just to update you very quickly, I will. So right now we've got a second hearing by Judge Canon. Her first 2 days of these hearings was from Friday and Monday. That was on whether or not Jack Smith is even legitimate. I would expect an opinion fairly soon there because she's already having then hearings on evidence, on hearings about due process concerns with the evidence, how they tried to show the documents. I still go back to that because in a criminal trial, there's going to be a jury if this ever gets to that point. And that photo, we know, was manufactured by the FBI that people are looking at right now as if that's what it looked like if you were just walking around Mar-a-Lago.
Well, and the other problem with it is another little nugget in this filing by the special counsel is clearly they wanted that photograph out there and they had those cover sheets, the secret SCI with a red border and top secret SCI with a yellow border. Those weren't how the documents were in the storage. Those were placeholders and cover sheets brought by the FBI to the raid almost as a prop so they could cover up sensitive information and then take a photograph, and then that's okay for the public to see. They wanted these photos out publicly as quick as possible. And even in the filings, they knew that these would be used as a part of their indictment or their charging documents. And what you see is those photographs. And they got them out so quickly because they had the props with them. It wasn't like they photographed the evidence and then had to go and digitally blur the documents out. As you see many times in court filings, things that should not be shown, they'll blur it out in the actual photograph, but to represent it. They brought props. They were ready to stage this in the manner that they did, and they spread it across the floor and made it look like there were so many classified documents with these big red headlines. How could the president not know that these were secret? Look at these cover sheets. That was the narrative they wanted you to believe, but it wasn't real because in their document, they even said, as a part of processing, the seized documents marked classified. ER&E photographed the documents with appropriate cover sheets added by FBI personnel next to the box in which they were located. Photographs attached, Exhibit 8, are examples. So they weren't even on the floor. They were in that box that is next to it. Yeah. None of it was reality, but that's what they wanted you to believe, that it was a mess, that they were littered everywhere, and he is such a danger to the American security because of how he was treating these documents. It just wasn't real. And all of that is even brought up in this hearing that was happening today.
Right. The FBI wanted the cameras to stop recording. They didn't say should turn them off. They did stop recording for a period of time. But for most of the raid, we do believe they were recording. The question is, were the cameras in places that would have gotten the videos of the FBI agents actually scattering the documents? Or was that done like in a room? Because you have to think about it. Usually, even a place with a lot of cameras and security, you've got those are usually in the hallways and kind of public areas. They might be pointed towards a room, but they're not usually inside a private office and things like that because of privacy issues. So you might not still have the actual video of them scattering around, but we do know that that has happened now. We know that it was not President Trump who just threw and his staff who just randomly tossed documents into a room that was scattered around. I mean, so there's already the issues there. We'd already talked about the second big issue, and I think this is huge, folks, is that when you're dealing with this many documents, 15 boxes of documents that were supposed to be illegally taken, and you have to go through all of those, and some have attorney-client privilege, and some don't, and some are classified to this level, and others are classified at another level. And the government takes them. They have to make a glossary, if you will, a table of contents, and put them in order so that when the defense is able to view the evidence against their client, you're able to go and say, okay, here's they said this document was there and it was improperly taken and stored. Let's go see. So it says this document is in, we can find it here. And then you go there, and then for a number of these documents, they weren't there. Some were totally missing, so they're gone now. We don't even know if they ever existed. And some are not in the place they're supposed to be. So you've got to, again, this is a huge issue. I mean, for attorneys to not be able to go to the evidence and rely on that, how it was taken and how it was put forward by the Department of Justice. I know that might sound to you as petty. It's not. This is huge, especially in a case where the entire case is about pieces of paper. That's what all this case is about. And so if some of it's disappeared, were they mishandling classified documents? Should they be charged for mishandling classified documents. It's much easier to charge an FBI agent for mishandling classified documents, even without negative intent, than it is a president of the United States who has declassification power. But Will, let's go to these phone calls.
Todd from Georgia on line 2. Todd, you're on Seculo.
Hi, thank you for everything you do. And my question is about the evidence at Mar-a-Lago that was obviously staged, and then it was illegally leaked to the media. And we saw them do this with the Steele dossier. They knew it was fake. They leaked it to the media. They got, special warrants to investigate the campaign. And then they got a special counsel to, go after the president. How do they keep getting away with this? I mean, this is like Gestapo tactics.
Well, you say, how do they keep getting away? They're the federal government. They're the Department of Justice, and they got elected, they got into power, and they set their sights on Donald Trump. So not only did we see these elected Democrat DAs or attorney generals set their sights on Donald Trump, whether it was Atlanta or New York, we've seen this happen through the appointment of Jack Smith to say, go after Donald Trump on whatever you can get him on. So if it's on January 6th in D.C., go after him there. If it's on documents in Florida, go after him there. I mean, the list goes on.
Will in South Dakota on line 3. Will, you're on Seculo.
Good morning. My question is where is the Supreme Court? In any swearing in of any office, you always see a pledge or an oath to follow the Constitution. And obviously, I don't understand why the Supreme Court isn't jumping in on this.
They don't typically jump in. So, obviously, this case could be on track to the Supreme Court, certainly. It's a very slow case because it involves classified documents. We said that this case was not going to be done before the election, even before we found out all of this other negative info. So ultimately, whether they like it or not, the Supreme Court could be an arbiter in almost all of these cases, even the cases that are originating in state court. Once you go through the state court process, Will, I think it's a good question. So in New York, for instance, it's not a great place if you're a Republican presidential candidate, especially named Donald Trump, to go through courts and juries and even in the state court system. And even the federal court system is not the best. The Second Circuit is maybe not the best one for you. But ultimately, if you're fighting it through that system, when you are done at the New York's highest level of court, you don't have to restart at the federal district court. If you believe your rights were violated and you were wronged, you can then take that directly to the U.S. Supreme Court. And a former president has probably the most weight to have their case heard, especially one who is currently running for president right now, than anyone else, because it affects so many issues that are bigger than just Donald Trump. It affects the future of our country.
Well, and also to Will's question as well, we know that we're waiting on 2 opinions from the Supreme Court that most likely will happen by Friday of this week. One being the presidential immunity case, which is a Jack Smith case out of D.C., where it relates to actions in obstruction of the official processes around January 6th, as well as the Fisher case, in which someone was challenging the application of the obstruction of official proceeding law and the broadness in which it's interpreted to the Supreme Court. 2 of those will affect cases that President Trump has going on, as well as you have to look at what you said on the broadcast yesterday, that there are many issues within this Mar-a-Lago case that could ultimately reach the Supreme Court, not just the appeal of if there happened to be a conviction at some point, but whether it be the appointment of the special counsel. If she rules one way, Judge Canon rules one way, and the government tries to appeal that ruling within the case to the appeals court, that's an issue that could be decided by the Supreme Court. It could be parsed out by the Supreme Court because of the magnitude and the constitutionality of that ruling. And that's just a motion within the case. There are many issues that could come forward out of this that could make their way up to the Supreme Court. But we also are a country that follows the rule of law, and there is a process to get to the Supreme Court. It wouldn't be good for the Supreme Court just to willy-nilly decide to jump into things, because that's not the way the system works. And even when Jack Smith tried to early take the immunity issue to the Supreme Court out of order, they rejected it. And then it went to the appeals court, and then it went en banc, and then it finally went to the Supreme Court, and they took it. So the Supreme Court is wary of going out of order, and that's a good thing for the system, not a bad thing.
Yeah, let's take Joanne's call.
Joanne from Ohio on line 1. You're on Seculo.
Hi, guys. There's so many issues with this Mar-a-Lago thing. The way they did this, just this total loss of due process. I mean, we don't even know they could have planted documents in these rooms that didn't have a camera. But doesn't this kind of fall under the fruit of the poisonous tree thing?
It could, ultimately. I mean, in fact, that's kind of what the judge is looking at here. I mean, I don't know if it's directly they're just saying it's fruit of poisonous tree, but these were motions will to exclude this evidence.
Well, that's right. I mean,
so that is what they're trying to do.
The motion that was filed was the motion to dismiss based on spoliation of evidence in violation of due process.
That is what you're talking about.
Our caller Joanne is spot on that would extrapolate out to what is considered the fruit of the poisonous tree.
You obtained it illegally, and then when you had it under your control, you didn't have it under control legally. Because, of course, the fact that there are documents now missing, so you're going to prosecute someone for documents they can't even see if they actually existed or not. The documents aren't in order. The documents aren't so you made up a glossary, table of contents that doesn't match the documents. The Department of Justice under Jack Smith, they're in a mess. They're in a mess. Let's keep it that way. Let's keep it that way, especially through the election. Because the more they're in a mess, the less that's a distraction issue for the American people. We could talk about the big issues like like what's happening at our border. And you know what? It also shows you can combat lawfare. It's tough. And the weaponization of our government against people and against politicians. But you can do it if the American people are with you on other issues that really affect them.